Hello and welcome to Workplace Makers with Nina Fountain. This is the podcast that gets to know the people creating workplaces we aspire to. It's about achieving the ultimate win, a workplace people are drawn to wherever they work from, and discovering how we can remove limitations to enable people to be their best through workplace innovation and design. I'm your host, modern workplace consultant Nina Fountain. Join me as I unlock the secrets of attractive, productive, and engaging modern workplaces. Welcome to the Workplace Makers podcast. Today we have Lizzi Whaley joining us, and Lizzi has more than 20 years experience working in residential and commercial design. She is the CEO and the owner of SpaceWorks Interior Architecture, a leading agency for the design and fit out of internal commercial spaces, offices, retail, hotels, hospitality, and aged care. And what I really love about having Lizzi on the show today is her understanding of human-centered design, which she uses to create these forward-thinking, impactful spaces that enhance well-being. So in fact, Lizzi has a really deep passion for sustainability, well-being, diversity, and inclusivity. And she's an award-winning industry leader and experienced designer. So we have a lot to learn from her today. Lizzi, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
And I'd love to start with a little around your background. What initially got you interested in thinking design, interior design? You were a junior designer about 20 years ago with SpaceWorks. So what got you interested in doing this profession as a living?
I think I fell into design. I started my design journey outside of school. So I wasn't particularly design orientated at school. I felt that because my parents were academics, that was the way that I was supposed to go. And I failed miserably in my, I'm dating myself now, but my sixth and seventh form years following an academic path. And then just was completely just sort of disappointed that I didn't get bursary. So I went and started working for a paint company and ended up working for that paint company for 9 years. And it would be under the guidance of Prue and Marsh Cook, who owned Alto Colour, that they ignited my passion in design. And working for them, I designed colour ranges and created a lot of colours for them and got really sort of involved in the design and architecture industry. And it was through them and with their support that I actually took on full-time study and worked for them part-time and got a design degree. And I went as a mature student in my early 20s. And that's how I managed to skirt the system of not having got my bursary. So I went to design school then, and I ended up finishing with them after working for them for about 9.5 years. And SpaceWorks is actually my first job in the commercial sector. And I guess you could say every door that's open from there I've sort of somewhat fallen into or been drawn to, but wasn't a premeditated life path that I've ended up here.
It sounds like you really made it work. It gave the opportunity to follow your passion and to find your passion and then to follow it.
I think life has been like that, though, that often you think a failure is a failure and it actually turns out to be one of your biggest life lessons. And if you can make it, it can turn into one of your biggest opportunities. So I've never seen failure as a failure. You need to try it a different way.
So you either win or you learn.
And sometimes the wins are not so good because you don't necessarily learn anything out of them. So yeah, I agree. Win or learn is a good way of putting it.
Did that background give you a real passion for colour? Do you have a soft spot for colour as a result of that background?
Massive soft spot for colour. And it doesn't mean I use colour liberally in the way people think that I might do in terms of loving colour. Colour can influence people. It can influence behaviour. It can influence mood. It can influence brand. It has so much of a key factor in telling a story. So when people know about my history in colour, they think I'm going to choose lots of bright colours and take them on a really colourful journey. But no, I actually think of colour more as a tool. And I love the impact that it can have on the way you make people feel in space.
That's a good segue for us into this topic of the value of interior design for improving people's well-being in a workplace, because colour is part of it. You touched on changing their mood, on improving their ability to connect with the space through the story, in potentially their ability to concentrate. What signal does this give them around what this space is about?
The answer to that is really, what is the value in good design? Because everything is designed. It's just whether it is good or whether it's not so good, and whether it aligns with what you're wanting people to do. I think when people ask me about the value of interior design, I will often have to take them to a negative place in order to land that conversation. It's like, well, if you go into a hotel room and you don't know where to put your bag, and you've got nowhere to put your makeup bag on the counter in the bathroom, and the lights are really low, and there's no bedside light, somebody has designed that, but they just haven't created a successful experience from it. Good design is actually seamless. It just means that you can do what it is that you needed to do from the space. And for certain types of spaces, that you can elicit a behavior that you want to have happen. So in the workplace, you want to elicit a behavior where people want to come and spend time, where they want to connect, where they can feel productive. And that doesn't necessarily always come down to the way something looks, but it's also coupled very strongly with the way it functions. And both of those two are a very important marriage. But then, yes, aesthetics can have a strong connection to making people feel valued. If you go into a space that feels tired, it just feels like the proprietor or the owner of that space doesn't care about you enough to make it look. So design gives people a lot of subliminal messages about how you feel about them. It also either supports or quite the opposite in terms of allowing people to do their jobs. So design is a tool.
Which is perhaps an insight for people who are thinking about design as we've just got to stay current in a workplace situation. Workplace leaders might be thinking, we don't want to be left behind with our competitors. We're looking at our competitors.
Design should be the answer to other questions. So the questions might be, how do we get people back into the office, which is a common question we're getting in the workplace. Or the question might be, well, how do we make more sales? Or how do we downsize? How could we potentially add 25% more staff into this location? So design is simply the answer to a different question. People are thinking that they need to modernize the space simply to keep up with the Joneses. Well, that's not generally the right answer. But if your place is looking tired, then that's usually a value-based question. Design is always the answer. And then you have to go back to, well, what's the question?
That leads straight to human-centered design. Do you want to give your summary, a précis of what is human-centered design in your view?
Well, I think the title's pretty good because it's basically putting people at the center of everything. And in any kind of space, you've got, if it's a business type environment, you've got the people that work internally in the business, and then you've got the external environment where people are either visiting the business or are engaging people with inside that business. So if you put people at the core of it, what do people need to do inside that space? What do you want them to be doing? And in the workplace, it's often around productivity and efficiency or collaboration. So therefore, you provide or design a space that enables that work to go on. So also, if you're thinking about it externally and it's around your team engaging with external people, providing the facilities so that they can engage with people properly. And even just, if you want people to come into an office and be inspired, well, then you're putting people at the center and you're creating spaces that allow for that activity to occur. So the activity allows people to be inspired, or it allows people that collaboration thing. So human-centered design for me is that, what do the people need? What functions do they need to perform? How do we need them to feel? And how do we need them to behave? And all of those things then inform the design outcome.
I'm going to throw this out because I know it's a common question people have when they think, well, we could establish our set of requirements based on, say, a survey. We could throw out a survey to our people, and that will then tell us what people need in the workplace. Whereas human-centered design takes a really different approach and looks at the quality of the information that you're getting to know, like, and hones in on the fact that what people say and what they do are often quite different things. So people might say they want in chairs at the entranceway, or they want, a variety of desks and different work settings, but then what they actually do could be completely different.
Certainly the approach that we take is we understand what the core problems are in the space. We do engage a level of surveys and those sorts of things. And you're right, what people say that they want and what they actually do are two entirely different things. So we do engage an element of observation. So observation is really important so that you can remove that surface level thinking that people have told you and actually find the depth of what they're actually doing. And then we create a very sort of activity-centered approach to it. But then the most important thing around human-centered design is around rapid iterations of like prototyping and staging and learning and testing and measuring and going back and actually seeing how you can influence and change that behavior. But you're right, people, what they say they want is often not at all what you actually end up giving them. But what I do think is really important about asking people is you get engagement. And when you go to undertake any project, one of the most important things is to take people on the journey and to have engagement, because if you have engaged people, then they will engage in the results that you provide them, or they'll be more accustomed and likely to get on board with the testing and measuring and prototyping stage. We did have a particular project that we worked on, and across a network of about 250 people, 4 people said they wanted hairdryers. Now, it's a really low-cost item. We could not get management to agree to put a hairdryer into the toilet facilities, and we were like, that's easy. It's a $60 solution. We just put it in anyway. And the amount of feedback about just having a hairdryer in a bathroom was phenomenal. And for that, it was interesting because it was a small thing, but that was a value question about people feeling heard. So often those surveys can give really low cost nuggets of gold that allow people to feel heard. And it's really around that value thing again. So it's around trying to weed out that information for really simple fixes too, because often what people want, we can't actually deliver on all of them. They're not possible. Budgets don't allow, space constraints, all number of things. So how can we still make people feel heard without giving them everything that they say they want?
Absolutely. And often they just want to have an honest conversation and have the input, hear the response, and know is that possible or is it not, and just be part of a conversation about it and not be ignored. Prototyping is really interesting. If people think about workplace, they're often thinking bricks and mortar. They're thinking things that take a long time to construct, and don't naturally think, oh, here's an opportunity for us to test and try some things, to prototype and to see what works and then be able to iterate. So can you talk to that at all? What have you seen be a successful way to prototype interior design?
We have certainly done prototyping around furniture solutions, particularly if companies are going from potentially a very heavy open plan scenario to more of an activity-based working. And a lot of larger corporates are doing that. We really implore people to either give us a half floor or a certain part of an area where we can test and prototype different solutions, or there might be around collaboration, because sometimes it's not always just around space things like furniture. We might be trying to influence a behavior or how people work together, and sometimes they're not even physical things. They can be around processes, or they can be behaviors. So we sit with the client and work out, well, where are we going? What is it that one, what are the problems? And two, what are we trying to achieve? And we've had a number of businesses lately that are talking around better engagement and getting people back into the office. So you have to take them to, well, what is the ideal scenario look like for you? And maybe they don't know what that looks like. So maybe it's about us sort of saying, well, this is best practice. This is what people are doing around the world. These are the things that we can explore, which sort of resonate with you, because different businesses have different requirements or different goals that they want to achieve. And then we will map out how we could get to that, or how we might be able to test or iterate that. And sometimes it is around furniture solutions. Sometimes it is around behaviors and processes. But one of the things that's really important for us with any delivery of any project is to identify who in the business are the champions. Because a lot of these things cannot happen simply from a top-down perspective. They have to happen from top-down, but also from bottom-up. So we look for those change champions who can actually pioneer and champion and ripple through the business why this is good and what the benefit is and all those sorts of things. So we identify how we're going to change that behavior inside of that business, and then what tools are going to support that, whether it's IT, whether it's furniture, whether it's other various things. So that's how we will generally approach that. But I think, you'd be quite aware of it too, is that one size definitely doesn't fit all. And we've even gone down some processes before where we think that this is the direction that we're going to need to go to, and then the feedback that we're actually getting is completely different. And you'll have done it for one business like that, and there's a completely similar type of business, but yet there can be some key things that are different, like even like their diversity makeup in their business is different. Some of the key functions that they do might be, the way they achieve it might be different. So they might have agile working principles. So the way we approach it in itself has to be particularly agile in terms of the tools we engage. In some scenarios, we'll bring in change people that actually will coordinate the change. Like, we will definitely collaborate with them in terms of how we want people to behave and be at the end, and then bring on specialists who do specialize in change, because it is obviously a specialized skill, as you know. And so sometimes the best way that we can support projects is to continue to provide that the design solution. Well, this is how we might be able to meet it from a design perspective. But I would like to think that we're a conductor of an orchestra. We're a conductor of a number of different people, whereby design is going to be the ultimate outcome, and we have to bring people along the journey that do those sorts of things along the way.
We've swapped notes about some of the projects that you've had recently that have been great examples of where human design has made a difference to the client's overall outcome.
Yes, so we've had a couple of clients, interestingly enough, that have still got a very heavily officed layout. And I remember one particular one, and of course COVID's thrown a real spanner in the works, because what we did do before COVID we don't really do anymore. But this particular client came from a very heavily densified office, and one of the things that was important for them was that all of those people were working in silos, and they just wanted to create an environment that required more collaboration. Now, the automatic answer would be, well, we need to put people into open plan. But then if you change people from having individual offices completely into an open plan environment without taking them on a journey of how they can do all of those private conversations or those private meetings that they could have before in their office. So we had to tailor, what did the future look like? The future looked like collaboration. The future looked like connection. Now, by taking people out of their own individual office, that immediately raises a value-based conversation. Well, I'm not important enough to have my own office. So before you were okay with me being in my office, but now all you want me to have is a desk. And actually what you're asking me to do is not even have a desk. I've just got an area where I can sit in and I can talk to people, but I now don't have any identity inside this business whatsoever. So we had to present to the business a kind of an understanding of the community and connection and heart that we were trying to create into the business. So we took them on a workshop where we explained what the ultimate aim was around connection, and then we came back to them with how we were going to implement that. And the outcome ended up being an open plan office with some great collaboration spaces. The future was around how that connection would support their business, how the connection would support them as individuals. What we were doing was providing them with really good value and making sure they felt valued, but we were providing it in a different package. And just in terms of how to make those individual people feel valued, we made sure that they had really great locations to put their gym gear, that when they came from the gym they could shower, that we had great kitchen facilities with coffee machines, and they had fruit, and they had all this kind of the stuff that provided value in a different box, in a different form. And that for the business was around making sure if we put people at the centre, they were able to do their job really well, that they were able to feel really connected to their peers, because they did often feel quite silo and isolated. They were able to share and collaborate. And the outcome also from a business perspective was better collaboration, that they ended up being a much higher performing team as a result of that collaboration. So that was the journey we took them on.
It sounds like a large part of that process, or at the forefront of your mind as you're taking these businesses on this journey, is how do people feel valued?
Design is around how you make people feel. And if
Mm.
you make people feel good, they'll want to be in that space. And that's essentially what we want from spaces. We either want people to come and dine from there, or we want them to work from there, or we want them to perform a behavior. So human-centered design is around identifying what feeling you want people to feel, and then taking them on a journey to make them feel like that.
And how do you think that's changing now? What do you see changing in the current workplace landscape?
I think that the workplace is probably the most confused right now that I have ever seen in my history and I think I'm probably coming up 25 years in the sector now. With hybrid working and working from home and all of those things, I think we do not know where we're going or where we're going to land. And even more so, it's around not one size fits all, is what's right for the business. Because in order to get a really good hybrid working solution, that is there's even more pressure on the individual. So it's around team leaders or team managers getting the best out of their team, and having this disconnection that we've become so used to in terms of a physical connection. Now we're separated by distance, is becoming harder and harder for people to navigate. And sort of 18 months ago, I was a really big proponent of a flexible workplace environment where people could work from home or come in and go there and about. And I'm now in quite a different place to that, because I've seen it in my own business that the people that work here, the less connection they have with others, the poorer their work outcome, the poorer their productivity, the poorer their connection, the poorer the support. And what you find is people were coming into the office and to have a team meeting, and then half their team was at home. So why did they even bother to come in at all? Or we'll find, particularly in a design sector, the designers will come up with an idea, and without someone around them to sense check that with, they could go 6 hours down a rabbit hole that's not the right direction. So we've actually started coming back into the office more now than we were before. Before we were 2 to 3 days. So I think it's a really unpredictable environment at the moment, and I think even more so people are having to test and measure and prototype until we can get to a position where we're like, yeah, 60% occupancy is the perfect number. 3 days in the office is the perfect number. I don't think we know any of that information right now, and this is as revolutionary as going from cellular offices to open plan, in my opinion. We don't know where we're going to be in a year's time, but it's certainly not going to be here.
Links back to what you said around one size does not fit all, and the connection now between the business solution that an individual business will come up with and other businesses is not as strong. So where previously we might say, oh, everyone's doing 3 days in the office, or pre-COVID it might have been everyone's got maybe half a day or 1 day of work from home that they'll tolerate within their workforce. But on the whole, people are generally not coming into the office except for a few cases of flexible work here and there. And now we don't really have that same blanket statement or blanket view, because the solution that's working for each business is going to be tailored to their people, the team practices, where they want to go,
And
their business.
I feel like a lot of the questions that we used to ask and could answer would be based on the space. So like when we moved to activity-based working, it was like, we need to collaborate. Cool. Well, we need to provide a space for collaboration, or we need to have quiet space. Right. Well, we'll provide a space for quiet space. And they were fairly easy models to design from a design perspective. But when you're actually dealing with people's behavior and those sorts of things and what makes them feel supported, and we've obviously been at home for a really long time, those are really like personal behavior-based things rather than an activity. So we're moving into a design area that doesn't have a black and white answer to an activity, because it's all even more so based on emotion, behavior, and connection and all those sorts of things. So I think it's a really, really interesting space to be in. But the one thing that I feel really strongly about is the difference between flexibility and hybrid working, and I feel that people couple the two of them in together. And I don't believe that they're the same thing. Hybrid working is around how do we, what is it to work from home and work in the office? That is a policy, that's a company thing, and how do we get the best out of our people in that regard? I think flexibility is around being able to go and pick up your kids. It's around being able to go to a doctor's appointment. And I think that every business should have flexibility, where if someone's 15 minutes late on the motorway getting in, it does not matter, because there's an understanding and an expectation the person will still get their work done and will do it within reasonable realms of hours and things like that. So I think that I will never put a strict policy around flexibility, because people have life, and I think in order to get the best out of people, you have to allow them to have the flexibility that life and work merge in places that aren't always necessarily a cookie cutter answer, an 8 till 5 or a 9 till 6 or whatever people do. So flexibility is where I think I'm really passionate about that.
It's a much broader picture where you could be flexible around location, you could be flexible about time, or even
Completely.
leave, or even, how you use your time. So there could be all kinds of flexibility in that concept of flexibility, whereas hybrid is really just whether you're in the office or not and for how many days. So it's
Completely.
much more limited. And like you say, it's often the guardrails around it are set at that company level. And when they're set at that company level, then you're cutting out a lot of individual benefit
Yeah, I agree.
and flexibility. Is there anything that excites you about the future of the office? So do you think that there's anything in this moving picture that is really exciting?
I get really excited when we start to talk about and look at people as individuals and how we might bring together and get the best approach or an answer out of a cohesive group. So for me, it's far more exciting when you get to really delve into the people part of it, whereas previously in the past 5 to 10 years, we've been looking at activities. This is what the business does. This is the activity that we need to have. But I love the idea that we have to understand the nuts and bolts of the people that are doing and that are in that space and what we're going to create from them, and then using space to elicit those emotions. So actually, the way we're going, whilst I could not tell you where it is, I think it's the most exciting thing, because I think that's where design can answer these most incredible questions, when you can actually work out what the question is. And I think now that we include diversity, equity and inclusivity, now that we have an awareness of neurodivergent people, now that we have all these different interesting things that are brought to the table, and we're now coupling it with sustainability, I think it makes it far more of an interesting problem to solve. Whereas before it felt a little bit like you could apply some sort of standard cookie cutter answers to get a result. Whereas now it's far more complicated, but far more
Mm,
interesting and far more rewarding. So
yeah.
I love where it is.
So much more challenging, but so much more opportunity, because then we could have more people having those great emotions when they come to the workplace and feeling more connected to their employer through the experience they have there.
I think also, businesses used to be really focused on the people that were leading the business, but I think there is a far more of appreciation that everybody is in different seats and everybody has value to bring. And I think that that's where design looks at every layer of a business and every layer of people that are in the business, and provides merit and solution and transparency for all of those people to be seen. And that's what I think is really cool about where we're at.
And are there any businesses or companies that you've worked with in the not too distant past that have done that really well, where they have really provided a solution for all the layers and all the seats and taken a really good look at the individuals in their business?
Well, certainly from an office perspective, we did a tech company just around the corner who don't like to be named. That was really interesting because you've got a really interesting range of people, from developers to marketers to those sorts of people. It was around how to provide space for every one of them to feel just as valued and seen in the business. We also completed a really cool job for James Crisp. That was a really exciting one where they went from one extreme to another, and I really enjoyed working with them. MMC is a great client of ours, where we brought them into a great space and had to connect management and the workers across 2 floors, which always provides some interesting dynamic solutions.
And so, finally, one area that we're all unique on and individual about is our food preferences. I think we have no problem disagreeing with people about their food choice, because we just know it's so unique. So I'd love to know, what is your favorite meal?
Don't have a favorite meal, but I have a favorite dining experience. I love to share. I'm one of these people that likes to have a little bit of everything. And I guess because I like to test and try and prototype in my work life, I like to do that in food as well. So I love to go to places where you can have sharing plates. So I can end up having 10 meals, but just across little small plates. So
Fantastic.
any kind of environment, I feel kind of a little bit gypped, and I get a lot of food envy if I've gone to a restaurant where you just have your one plate and you just buy a main and that's it. And I look around and I go, oh, I'd like to try a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that.
I love it. That's fantastic. It's the variety and it's the communal experience, and it's a great way to connect with people. Hey, can I have a little bit of your meal?
Yeah, exactly. Would you
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah.
Even if they're not at your table.
So good. Are there any final words you wanted to pass on to people who are looking to create top-notch workplaces for their people?
I think the main thing would be not to have any expectations of where you'll end up. And I think those that go into any design project with an expectation of where they will end up will be sorely disappointed. And I think that the best offices and work environments are the ones where you actually listen, and you listen to what's going to create the best environment. And even if it is your business and you think that you want to go in this direction, ultimately you're taking a group of people on a journey to be successful. So it's, what does it require for the collective to be successful? And when I finally let the hands off the reins in our own office to allow other people to verbalize what it was that they wanted, we've ended up creating a space that's really collaborative and really inclusive. It's not what I would have designed if I had done it for myself, but that's the whole point, is business is not about one person. So I think don't be wedded to the journey and just go on it and see where you land, really.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, for your time. How can people find you if they want to connect with you or with SpaceWorks?
LinkedIn, basically. LinkedIn is where I am personally, Lizzi Whaley, or you can certainly find spaceworks.co.nz for the business website to, follow along and see what we're up to. But LinkedIn seems to be the best platform for all tidbits and knowledge and blogs and all those sorts of things. Lots of information about what we're doing.
Brilliant. Thank you for being on the show. Great to have you.
Thank you.